No. Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new around here, hello, welcome. My name is Charlotte. This is one thing I want to mention because it's the first time I've mentioned it since it's happened in terms of filming. I've changed my channel name. It is now Charlotte's Chapter, which I think is quite cute and a lot of people say it's quite cute. I decided to change it to that just so it feels more me, even though like Alonzi Reader was still me because I'm a Doctor Who stan. I just thought Charlotte's Chapter meant it's more about my life and less about specifically reading. It means I can make videos and feel like it can be more about me and more about my life in general rather than my life in terms of books. Who knows if I'll actually upload any videos that are to do with not books. So we're now going to move into doing my wrap up, my January wrap up. That's what we're going to be talking about in this video. One thing I'm changing with my wrap ups for 2021, or at least for now, I did include book hauls and all the books I bought that month or got that month in my wrap-ups, but I decided not to just because it shortens the video a little bit more and it means I can make book hauls outside of my wrap-ups. We're just going to be sticking to the books I've read, the TV shows I've watched and the films I've watched in the month that we are talking about. So that month is January. In terms of books, I technically, on Goodreads it says 4, but if we're going by like full books that I started and finished in the month of January, it would technically at the moment be 3, but because I'm filming this on the last day of January, it will be 4 by the end of the day. But also, I've read 5 books this month. Does that make sense? No. So I'm just gonna jump in. First book I want to talk about, I just want to talk about it so I have it on record in terms of my January wrap up. Because I did finish it in January, even though I talked about it and my conclusive thoughts in my December wrap up. I finished it in the first few days of January and I filmed my December wrap up in the first few days of January. That's why I did it in my December wrap up. I'll leave my December wrap up in the link below so it makes more sense. But that is Nevernight by Jo Christoph. Not going to talk about it, just going to say that I read it and I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was good. I enjoyed it. Going to continue on the series. The next book that I read this month is a reread, and it's a book that I haven't read in like 10 years, and it was fun. It was a hoot. I didn't love the book, but it was a great time reading it, and that is New Moon by Stephanie Meyer. I'm slowly rereading the Twilight series since I read it when I was like 11. And that was like 10 years ago, nearly 10, 11 years ago. This book, I think I ended up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. It is frustrating, so frustrating. I hated so much about this book, but obviously I had so much fun because it's Twilight and it's nostalgia. I just found the characters and the writing quite insufferable. I found myself loving Jacob, and that is a rare thing for me. I've never loved Jacob. I found that once Edward had left, the scenes between Bella and Jacob, I loved them, and I was like, am I team Jacob? But then Edward came back into the mix and I was like, oh, no, I think I'm team Edward. And the one thing that I've learnt from this book and with the comparison to the movie is in the book, I found it harder to feel sorry and to sympathise and to understand Bella's emotions in comparison to the film. In the film, I was like, God, I get it. I get that you're sad. I get you're depressed. In the book, I was like, okay, grow up. Obviously, I'm not excusing that she is dealing with depression in this book, but for me, the writing made it so I couldn't. I don't know if that's on me and I don't know if that's on the writing, but I just found myself throughout this book being like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. And then I look back and I was like, Charlotte, she's literally feeling depressed right now. That's like so harsh. And my friends were like, Charlotte, that's really harsh. I'm like, I know, but it's just, I couldn't. Maybe that's the writing, maybe that's me, I don't know. But then when I rewatched the film, I was watching the film and like, oh my God, Bella, I'm like so sorry, like this is so horrible. Which made me love the film even more. Like I definitely loved the film more than I remembered loving it and more than I loved the book. I tabbed, I can't really see if you can see it because of the light, but I tabbed the hell out of it. And it was just so much fun, and I'm very intrigued and excited to read Eclipse because I can barely remember Eclipse. All I can remember is it's just Victoria trying to kill Bella, and that's all I can remember. And also Jacob hugging Bella to keep her warm, and everyone's there like, oh, I'm so annoyed that I can't keep her warm. And I forgot that they get engaged, or like he proposes in this book, and I'm like, premature, okay. It was a ride, but it was a great ride. It was a frustrating ride, but it was a great ride. The next 2 books I read were for my 6th vlog. I think it's the 6th installment in my This vs. That series. Once again, we'll link in that playlist in the description below. So for this video, just kind of like the video I did for it before, I went to my Goodreads TBR, went to the author's name and went to the top and the bottom, so like A to Z. So the first book that I read was The Poet X, or Poetic Z actually, by Elizabeth Acevedo. I was quite nervous going into this book because it's loved by a lot of people, by pretty much everybody. Also it's because it's written in verse, and I've read a book in verse in the past and didn't really get on with it, and I just don't understand and don't get on with poetry, so I was worried. I was scared. I was like, oh, am I gonna like this as much as everybody else does? And I did, or not as much as everybody else. I think, again, I gave it like a 4 out of 5 stars or a 4.25 out of 5 stars. It was really good and I loved the story and I loved our main character. But I think the fact that it was written in verse had hindered my experience and my enjoyment of it because I just don't connect with poetry writing as much as other people do. A lot of people could just read poetry and be like, oh, meanings and beautiful. And I'm just there like, is this meant to make sense? Is this meant to be something? Is that meant to have like hidden meanings? I'm just like, it's words. But I still had a great time reading this book. Obviously, I didn't give a synopsis for Twilight because you don't need to know about Twilight. You all know about Twilight. But the Poetic Z follows our main character Z Mora, and she is brought up in a very religious household. She's a Dominican American and obviously her parents from the Dominican Republic. She lives in a very strict household where her parents hold her accountable to more things than her brother just because she's a girl, and she's not allowed to date boys, she's not allowed to think about boys, and she's not allowed to even do that until college or past college. She lives in a very strict environment, and then one time, you know, she meets a guy and she likes him. She knows that she's not allowed to, and she knows she's not really allowed to form a relationship with him, but she expresses herself through poetry, and she eventually starts to discover slam poetry and getting into slam poetry, and it's about her relationship with her mother and her parents, also with herself, her identity of being Dominican American and being a woman. Being a woman is a massive part and a massive driving force of this book, and there's so many comments about sexism and just about being a woman in today's society. And I had a great time. I thought it was a great book. Not as good as I wanted it to be because of the whole verse thing, but at the end of the day, I had a good time. It was a good book, and I'm definitely going to read more of Elizabeth Acevedo's works. And the second book that I read for that video was obviously going to be at the end of the alphabet, and it was going to be Z, and so I read The Book Thief by Marcus Zuzak. I once again went into this book with high expectations because everybody says they sobbed their eyes out of this book and it's their favourite book of all time and it's like the book of whatever. This book follows our main character Liesl, and at the beginning of the book she is travelling, I don't know where from, but she's travelling to somewhere in Germany because her mum is kind of wanted by the Nazis. I think maybe she's communist or something like that. You know, it's World War II Germany. And so she goes and stays with this couple and they kind of become her mum and dad. And it's about her just like living her life in Nazi Germany. And at the beginning of the book, she doesn't really know how to read or write, but through gradually stealing books, her adopted dad, or her dad, does slowly teach her how to read, and she kind of becomes known as the book thief by her friend and by Death. This book is narrated by Death, and it follows Liesl as she's just going about her life and stealing books and just experiencing World War II Germany. I didn't love this book as much as everybody else does. I feel like I'm one of the very rare people who didn't, and I think the main thing is it's a very slow book. For me, it was a very slow book, and I found myself not loving and connecting to the characters as much as you're meant to and as you're expected to, because that is what will make the ending more emotional, because you'll get to the end and be like, I love these characters so much, and then when all the bad stuff happens and all the big stuff happens, you're like, oh, this is so emotional. But for me, I was just like, okay, cool, I get it, I know it's sad. Like, I got that it was sad. I was reading it, but like, oh, this is really sad, but I wasn't feeling that in terms of my relationship with the characters. Also, Death spoils the book. Death spoils what's going to happen and what does happen, so that made it less dramatic and more anticlimactic for me. But it is still a good book, and I did enjoy the themes that it explored, and I do generally enjoy books that are set in World War II and even in like Nazi Germany and stuff like that. I find them really interesting, but I just didn't love it as much as everybody else. It's a good book, I liked it. I think I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but I think because it was so slow and I kind of hit a slump when I was reading it, it just didn't hit as hard for me as it did with everybody else. And the book that I'm currently reading, which I've got like 70 pages left to read today, and I'm definitely going to finish it by today because I want to. I'm determined to, and I'm loving reading this book. It is a reread, and it's a book that I haven't read in like 7-8 years. And I've been meaning to reread it for so long, and I'm so happy that I finally have. It's brought me so much joy to my life. It's made me fall back in love with reading, even though I hadn't really fallen out of it. It was just because I got in a slump, I thought I'd reread a book, and I'm just so happy that I did. And that is Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. I love this book so much. I love this series so much. I knew I did, but it's not until I dived back into rereading this book that I went, I love this. It's so easy and so calming, and I just find myself wanting to constantly read it. Me as a reader, I usually can't sit down for a long period of time and just read. I find it really hard to get the motivation to just flat out read. But this book, that's all I wanted to do. I've just been having so much fun, and I've also been rewatching the film, the first film, alongside it, and it's made me realise how lazy the writing in the film is and how it's almost a disservice to this story and to this book. I still enjoy the film and I still like the film because it gives me memories of being a kid and it's still fun and I love the cast, but it just emphasises how amazing this is and how lazy I find the film. I love this so much and it brings me so much joy, and the structure and the writing, it's so calming, as I've said, and I just love it. I low-key want to reread Sea of Monsters after this, but then I feel like I need to jump into some other books and maybe save Sea of Monsters for when I need to get out of a reading slump again. But I'm just having so much fun, and I definitely think this is going to be a 5 out of 5 stars, like no doubt about it. And it's made me so excited for the TV show. Like, I need this TV show now. I need some casting news. I really hope that they make Percy 12 and they don't make him like 16 or whatever he was in the films. Casting people, can you cast Logan Lerman as Poseidon? Because that man is everything. So those are all the books I read in the month of January. I'm now going to going to be moving on to TV shows, and I watched a decent amount of TV. January's been a rocky month for me, so I've just spent a lot of time watching TV and just kind of escaping. I could talk about quite a few shows, but I'm just going to limit them and talk about shows that I watched in full this month, so that I watched from the beginning of the series to the end of the series. And the first show that I want to talk about is Staged Season 2. Staged is a little like pandemic project of David Tennant and Michael Sheen, who were in Good Omens together. It's kind of like a hard concept to talk about, because when I went into watching season 1, which came out last year, I thought that it was just them recording random conversations that they were having, but it is quite scripted, and they do script the kind of plot for the show. I am struggling to describe Staged. I feel like it's a lot easier if you watch it and you kind of watch the first episode. It is so good, and it's just such a great laugh. If you love Michael Sheen and you love David Tennant, you're going to love this, because they're just being them, over the top versions of themselves, just shouting at each other, talking, being best friends, but also being like angry little middle-aged men. Season 2 was just brilliant, and they had so many special guest stars in season 2, like so many more than season 1, and I just had a great time with season 2. I just binge watched it really quickly, and I just love them, and I want them to keep doing this for as long as they can. The second show that I want to talk about is the 4th and final season of a Netflix show, and that is The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina. As I said, this is the 4th and final season of the show. The majority of season 4 is really, really good. I enjoyed it so much and had so much fun. Every episode felt like a movie, every episode felt like a massive adventure. In this series, we're watching our characters as they're having to face these eldritch terrors, which, as in the name, are terrorising Greendale and terrorising their town. It's obviously about our witches and our characters having to kind of fight them, and building up to obviously a climatic ending, because obviously it is the end of the show. And it did build up really well, and it did leave some cliffhangers, and it did leave some things of like, oh my god, what's gonna happen in this last ever episode? But from people I know who had binge watched it and already got to the end of the season before I did, they told me, and I've heard from them, that the last episode wasn't the best. And I was nervous, because I was like, what are they gonna do? So I got to the last episode, and I watched the last episode, and the episode before that was amazing. I really, really enjoyed the penultimate episode. The last ever episode of the show, not as bad as Supernatural, but it was still not great. The build-up was good. Like, the majority of the episode was good, and it was very like high stakes, like what's gonna happen? But then the payoff and the ending and like, you know, the fallout of what they were doing in this episode was just very like, are you serious? I didn't feel like it was lazy, but I just felt like it was very cliche. It wasn't a happy ending, which I know not every ending can be happy ending, because back in the day, happy endings were more common, so doing a non-happy ending was like, oh, it's realistic and all that stuff. But now that that has become the norm, I'm tired of non-happy endings. I just want a happy ending. And this wasn't a happy ending. The rest of the season was really, really good. I'm just frustrated that it ended that way. I'm going to switch around the order that I talk about these next two shows, because I want to talk about my favourite one last. The next show that I watched was one that I didn't expect and didn't plan on binge watching, but I did. It's one that I saw a trailer on Twitter like middle of last year, and I saw it in a discourse of people being like, can we please drop this whole like student-teacher relationship thing? It's tired, we're bored of it, leave it. And it's called A Teacher, and I think it's originally out on Hulu in America, but it came out on BBC iPlayer in the UK. It's got Nick Robinson in it, who we know as Simon from Simon vs. Homo Sapiens Agenda, or Love Simon, and Kate Mara, who is in multiple things. She plays a teacher, he plays a student, and it's about, obviously quite self-explanatory, a student-teacher relationship. I went into it being like, I'm so tired of this. I hope this isn't like Ezra from Pretty Little Liars. I hope they do something good with this and they don't romanticize it, basically. I have to take back my pre-thoughts on it and my pre-hatred for it, and actually say this was a really good TV show. Our teacher Claire, who's just joined the school and is first teaching at the school, and she obviously meets her students and meets this one student called Eric. He's like a footballer, like popular, blah blah blah. He wants to go to this college on a scholarship, but his like grades are slipping and he needs to get his SAT score up, so she starts tutoring him, and obviously through that and through previous encounters they start a relationship. Because it's more of a mature show, they did it in a more mature way. Halfway through the show is when the police find out and when she gets caught for it. And the latter half of the show is showing the impact and the aftermath of this relationship and how it has affected both Claire and Eric. And it was done so well. Straight after it happens, and in a couple of years after it happens, Eric's all like not wanting to talk about it. He closes himself off, but he kind of tries to hide it and still kind of puts up this front of being like the cool popular guy, but you know underneath that he's struggling. And then when he goes to college and people are like, oh, I heard that you slept with your teacher, that's so cool, man, you see him really struggling because she groomed him, because she abused her power and she abused her position as being older than him and being his teacher. And then you also skip 10 years in the future to see where they are in their life now and how that still affects Eric. 10 years on, when he's in his late 20s and he's got his own life, he still isn't in the best position as he could have been if this never happened. You hate Claire throughout all of it. if you're a sane human being and you understand morality. I really did enjoy it, and all the stuff I said about it before when I saw the trailer, take that back. It's really, really good. Definitely give it a watch. And the next show that I want to talk about, I love this show with my whole heart, but I knew I was going to, because of who wrote it. Russell T Davies. It's a Sin. I want all of you to watch It's a Sin. And I'm not saying that from a, like, it's a great show and like, I want everyone to love it. Obviously it's a great show, but I want everybody to watch it so they can educate themselves on how HIV and AIDS impacted and almost destroyed so many lives of gay men in the 1980s. The show is set in the UK and it follows 5 main characters in the 1980s, 4 gay men and their like best female friend. They all live together and we all see how they're going to come together across these 10 years. It's about them celebrating their queerness and being able to be as queer as they can because they all live together and they're having the best time of their lives, and they include themselves and they're surrounded by the queer community in London. It also portrays how the HIV and AIDS crisis kind of intertwined into their lives and intertwined into the queer community in the 1980s. And it is just so beautiful, but it is just so fun because you're just seeing queer gay people just being themselves and having fun and celebrating themselves. It's also really sad because you're seeing how this disease affected so many people and how the government and people outside of the queer community was so harmful, and how, as I said, the government just ignored them and were just like, it's their own fault, it's a sin against them, hence the term It's a Sin. I got so emotional over it, I cried my eyes out. It was just such a great time, and it's got a really, really great cast in it. It's got Ollie from Years and Years, the band Years and Years. It's got Lydia West, who's from the show Years and Years. It's got Stephen Fry in it, Neil Patrick Harris, Keely Hawes, Sean Dooley, Tracy Ann Oberman. It's got a really, really good cast. I've been excited for the show ever since Russell T Davies announced it, which was like over a year ago. It was probably like, yeah, 2019 time he announced it, and I've been waiting and waiting and waiting for this show. And I've been watching the cast that they've been filming, all the videos and photos that they've been posting, and how it came out was just perfect. It was an amazing show and just so informative. It really made me go like, I actually don't know as much about HIV and AIDS as I thought I did, and it made me like look it up and research stuff and kind of really learn about it. And obviously the cast and crew and everybody who loves this show and is wanting to support the show is kind of still raising awareness and trying to put out how the stigma around HIV and AIDS is still out there today, and how we need to make it more of a comfortable conversation to talk about, and how we need to educate people about it more, and just to make it less of a stigma. I love this show. Please, please go and watch it. It's on Channel 4 in the UK. I think it's coming to HBO in the US in the middle of February. So now we're going to move on to the films that I watched this month. And again, I had a decent film watching month. That doesn't make sense, but okay. So I'm going to talk about 6 films. I also just want to say I have started an Instagram account where I do film commentaries, because I started doing them on my private story on my normal Instagram account, and then my cousin was like, please make this a thing, please make a YouTube account or something like that. And I was like, I CBA to like just film myself for like 2 hours watching a film and then have to edit through all that footage, so I'll do an Instagram account where I just kind of film little clips and then edit them together and post them on Instagram. I just thought it'd be a lot easier, so that's what I've done. I will have it linked in the description below to check out. Don't expect it to be like all those other YouTube commentaries out there. It's just a bit of fun. It's just me having a bit of fun and just being able to vent about the films I'm watching. So the first film that I want to talk about is We Can Be Heroes, which is a Netflix film, and I just see it as Shark Boy and Lava Girl sequel. This film is about the kids of superheroes in this world where superheroes go and save the day, with 2 of them being Shark Boy and Lava Girl, and it's about the kids of these superheroes in a situation when their parents have been captured, so they have to go and save the day and save their parents. So you've got all these kids who've got special powers depending on who their parents are. So Shark Boy and Lava Girl have a literal child, so that's ruined your childhood for you, but she's the best character in this whole film. Her name's Guppy and I love her with my whole heart. She's the most adorable little child ever. I gave this film an 8 out of 10, I think, and I loved it more than I thought I would, and I think I loved it more than other people did. If you go into this film just thinking it's gonna be a fun kids film, you'll love it. It is just so jokes, and I just loved it. It was just so much fun. It's directed by the same guy who did Shark Boy and Lava Girl and Spy Kids, so if you love Spy Kids and Shark Boy and Lava Girl as a kid, you're gonna love it because it's got that same immaculate vibe. The next film that I watched is kind of a rewatch, but also because I don't really remember it that much, but I think I remembered more of it than I thought when obviously I started watching it, and that is Remember Me. I watched this years ago and I do remember it. Obviously I remember very specific moments of it, but I just didn't remember it as a whole. But I think, again, as I said, I remember more of it than I realised I did. It's about our main character Tyler, played by Robert Pattinson, our Lord and Saviour Robert Pattinson. He's got family issues, you know, his brother committed suicide, not got the best relationship with his dad, but he loves his little sister and he loves taking care of his little sister. And then one night when he kind of gets into a fight, he ends up kind of beating up a police officer, and then he realises he's in the same class as the police officer's daughter, so he starts to kind of like date the police officer's daughter just to like get back at him, but obviously then he ends up falling in love with her. This is your typical like early 2010s romance film, so along the lines of like The Vow and Dear John. Robert Pattinson is immaculate in it. We love that man. We love him so much. And the ending, if you know, you know. And if you don't know, I ain't gonna spoil it because it's one of the most shocking endings. I don't know why I tried to do like a Scottish or Welsh accent. I don't even know what that accent was, but it's one of the most shocking endings I've seen in my life. The next film that I watched is one that I've been wanting to watch for a while and ended up watching it with some of my friends over like Facebook, and that is Guns Akimbo. Do you remember a couple of years ago when this like random image appeared on the internet, was circulated on the internet, and everyone was like, what's the context of this image? And it was Daniel Radcliffe in like a dressing gown and slippers with guns on his hands being like, ah! Does anyone know that image? And we were all like, what is this image? This is amazing, but where is it from? And then we realised that it was from one of his new films, Guns Akimbo. And then I was like, I need to watch this film now. So I did. It was good. I think I gave it like a 7 out of 10 stars. It is very much within its genre. It's about our main character, Miles, who he's got like a deadbeat life. He's working at this like gaming company, but he's not really loving it because it's like one of those like happy wings, happy birds, whatever sort of game. He's lost his girlfriend and he's just a bit sad. And he spends his evenings kind of like trolling on this game thing, which is basically like live streaming real fights. So he like trolls people on there, and then one time when this troll kind of works out where he lives, they kind of kidnap him and attach guns to his hands, and then they put him into the game. So then he is streamed live across the internet on this game of him going up against this like badass killing machine woman. But it's fun, it's jokes, it's kind of like Nerve, you know the film, I haven't seen it, but you know the film Nerve where it's like people watching people do stupid stuff. It's kind of like that. I don't really feel like I have much to say about this film apart from that it fits very much into its genre. The writing's not the best because at the end of the day it's just about fighting and guns and blood. It's very gory. The next film that I want to talk about is Erin Brockovich. I've known about this film for as long as I can remember because the Rents used to have this, or do have this, I don't know if they still do actually, on DVD. They've had it on DVD since I was like a wee child. But I finally watched it because it's on Netflix and it was so good. Such a good film. It's got Julia Roberts in it and she won an Academy Award for it. And it's based on a true story of our main character, Erin Brockovich. She's a single mum with 3 kids and she doesn't really have a job and she's struggling. And then when she kind of gets into a car accident, her lawyer ends up not being able to get her like compensation for being in this car accident. So she kind of says to him, can I have a job? Give me a job. I need a job. So she starts working at his lawyer firm. And then she finds this case that obviously the lawyers are working on, how this company, I don't really know what sort of company they are, they might be like a water company or something like that, have lied to the residents near their plant about how the water around them is safe, even though it's got this like chemical in it. It's a safe chemical, when really it's a really radioactive and very dangerous chemical, and it's about Erin being like, look, this is bad, we need to fight them. And she does. And it's based on a true story and Erin Brockovich is a real woman. And it's just such a good film because Julia Roberts is immaculate in it. She's so good. And I love legal biopics. I've realised that. Biopics in general, I love them. And this one was just so good. So many iconic insults. That girl knows how to insult. Also, I've got to say, I think I gave it 8 out of 10 stars. The next film that I watched is one that I kind of wanted to read the book before, but at the end of the day, I don't really feel like I need to, and I can still read the book, but I'll just do that at some point in the future because I'm not jumping on the gun to read the book straight away. And that is Misery. Obviously, this is based off a Stephen King film, and it's just very popular in pop culture for like Kathy Bates' performance and Annie Wilkes and all that sort of stuff. So this follows our main character Paul Sheldon, who is an author, and he's just in this remote cabin in Colorado finishing up his book, and he's like, oh, I've finished it, now let's go back to New York and see my family. And then he's driving along, he hits a snowstorm, his car goes blum 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 blum. He could end up dying, but this kind woman comes along. It's like, oh, I'll help you, blah, blah, I'll take you back to mine, I'm a nurse so I can help you, which is a little bit fishy to not take him straight to the hospital, but okay. She starts to look after him, but then things go south. This woman name is Annie Wilkes, and she is supposedly Paul Sheldon's biggest fan, and then when she reads one of his books and realises that he has killed the main character Misery in his books, she's really angry at him and she makes him write a next book to kind of make up for what he did and keeps him captive. It's just so high stakes in the most calm way, because throughout this whole film you're just like, how is he gonna get out of this? Because he is stuck in bed because he's like broken his legs, and she lives on this like remote farm when it's snowing, and you're just like, how is he gonna get out of this? And you want him to get out of this obviously because she's crazy. And at the end, when it gets even more high stakes, I love it. But I just had a lot of fun with this film. So many iconic scenes. You might know one of the iconic scenes with the hammer and the planks of wood and his legs. And I do want to read the book just for comparison and just because I do love a bit of Stephen King. And I gave this film an 8.5 out of 10. And the last film that I watched this month, I was, and still am, an Alvin and the Chipmunks stan. but I've never seen the final film, Alvin and the Chipmunks, The Road Trip. So that's what I watched. I love the first 3 films. They're a comfort to me and they remind me of my childhood and in so many happy times. So I'd never seen this film, so I decided I'd watch it. And I had so much fun. I think I ended up giving it a 7 out of 10 or like a 6.5 out of 10 stars. And I just had so much fun because I went into it knowing what it was going to be and enjoying what it was. But in this one, it follows Alvin and Theodore and Simon as they realise that Dave could be getting married and could be getting engaged to this woman, and that the son of this woman doesn't really like them, they don't get on with him, so they kind of team up, like Alvin and the boys and the son team up to kind of stop the engagement, and they have to like travel from LA to Florida to do that. It's so dumb but so much fun. But some of the one-liners that predominantly Theo comes out with are golden. I think the only critique, which I should have many critiques of Alvin and the Chipmunks, but coming from someone who loves them so much, the inclusion of Bella Thorne and Laura Morano's character. I understand why Bella's in it because she is the client of Dave. She's the reason why he's gone to Florida to like help her launch her song or whatever. She's just barely in it, and then when she is at the end of it, it's just like, okay, cool. And she's clearly there for Miles, the son, to kind of just like crush on her. And then you also have Laura Morano in it, who's Allie from Austin and Ally. And her character is so pointless because when they get to Florida, the boys get grounded in the hotel room. And they're like, oh yeah, the babysitter's gonna come. But the boys break out of the room, but then they come back to the room and their babysitter's there. And it's just Laura. She's just sitting on the chair chatting to her friend on FaceTime. And that's it. Like, she didn't need to be there. They clearly put Bella Thorne and Laura Morano in these films to attract that kind of like mid-early 10s Disney Channel audience. There are just so many amazing lines and so many funny moments and so many classic Alvin and the Chipmunk funny moments in it. But if you know and love this series anyway, this film's gonna be fun. I had a lot of fun. So that is it for my January wrap up. It's been a long one. My throat hurts. I need a drink. So I hope you all enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below all the stuff that you read and watched in the month of January. If you're new around here, do not forget to subscribe, turn my notification bell on so you know when Annette's gonna post. And with that all said and done, I will see you all in my next video.